Okay, so now we've got our surface set up and we've got our sketch and toon shader turned on with our standard renderer. Let's have a look at how we can adjust the look of these outlines that we've got on our 3D object. So to control the lines, we need to have a look at the sketch and toon material that's appeared in our materials library. So if I double click it to open it up, and this is a very different material to the other ones that we've looked at before. So the first thing is, if we look on the left-hand side, we've got a whole bunch of settings for the lines that we're going to see. The first thing is if we go to strokes, so strokes are the lines, the outlines, we need to make sure that they're turned on, and enable should be on by default. Okay, I'm going to go through and describe hopefully what are the most common sense kind of things. The easiest thing to kind of look at is the thickness. So if we go to the thickness setting on the left-hand side, this controls obviously the thickness of those lines. If we change this value and turn it up, we should see now we're getting much thicker lines around our 2D sketch and toon type shading system. Now I've got my interactive renderer turned on. If you haven't got yours, jump back into here, interactive render region, and just draw a box across your object that you've got here. Okay, so we've got a thickness setting. That's pretty simple. We've got things like an opacity setting. So if I go to opacity, I can change the overall opacity of those lines, and I can make them a little more faint or a little softer. So we get, this is very much sort of a pen-drawn kind of look with a marker pen. So all these settings, obviously, by changing various values on here, we can start to create different styles of rendering. Okay, we can distort our lines or our curves. So if we go to distort and turn that on, we can use what's called a noise function. So noise is like a random pattern, and what that will do is to break up those outlines and make them more rough looking. By changing the displacement amount, that changes how much our lines get warped or distorted. And by changing the scale of the distortion, if I make this a lot bigger, rather than have small, scratchy, scribbling looking distortions, I'm starting to get larger, softer, curved looking distortions. And if I turn that up really high, I'll get these big kind of wobbly lines around. So these look like very sort of slow, hand-drawn, wobbly kind of looks. So what I'm changing here is this distortion value, both the amount of displacement and the scale. Those are probably the two most important settings for getting very irregular looking lines on your outline. I'm just going to go back to the thickness of mine as well and just turn them down a little bit. And now I'm starting to get a look that kind of looks like a scribbly pen has been used to draw these lines. Those are really the most important settings. One thing obviously that's really useful is that we can change the color of these lines. So if I go to the color setting, I can put in a custom color. Black is very common for inking things, but you might choose a very different color. You might choose red outlines to get a very different kind of look. So as I said before, all of these different settings are just different ways of creating different types of looks or styles. So every single function that is available for the outlines, their thickness, how much they're distorted, the colors, all of those things can be controlled by a whole bunch of other settings. I'm not really going to go into these at the moment. I think to keep it really simple, all we need to really deal with are things like the thickness and the color. And if you want distortion, those things in themselves are usually enough to be able to build up a whole variety of different types of styles and looks with the outlines, with these strokes.